Welcome to Industrial PLC Applications. This video is on addresses, aliases, and variables and data types. This is part 1. In parts 1 and 2, we looked at simple variables. Variables that can represent a single number or inputs and outputs. But life isn't simple. And just like life, things get complicated in variables. So, to begin with, variables are organized into collections, and the collections do not have the same status. All variables are displayed and stored in collections. For every program created in a project, a place to create and organize variables is created at the same time. They are referred to as local variable collections. Bad news is the variables created and stored here are only available to the logic held within the associated program. The good news is you can recycle variable names. Certain variables like timers or counters will be created by default in the local collection. This has advantages and disadvantages. Some of the advantages, well, it's quick and easy to find, and no other program can take control of that local variable. Some of the disadvantages are it's very hard to create a global heartbeat timer, and you can end up with multiple TON_1s. Furthermore, by default, any timer or counter created for use in the program is created within the local collection and cannot control any other program. In the above example, there are other variables that we'll be looking at in future videos and instructions. Global variables are ones that can be used by any program within the project. The advantage is that you can create variables that will control local variables. For example, you can create an internal master control relay bool. And this variable will be used in every program as a master permissive. Timers and counters can be created in the global collection, but it's not easy to do, and it will cause confusion. Unlike local variable collections, there is only one global variable collection, and it will have variables already set up when the project is created. This is because inputs and outputs that are built into Micro 800 series PLC are shown in the global collection, so that all the programs can access them. The global variable collection also includes PLC self-diagnostic variables that can be used to monitor the progress of a program or the health of the PLC. Some special variables had to be created in order to make sense of the transformation of data within the PLC to the human world and vice versa. Consider a PLC only works with ones and zeros. Humans have many systems of numbers. This means that the software and the PLC must be able to recognize human numbering systems like decimal and hexadecimal in the strangest numbering system ever devised: time. The biggest problem is time does not have a common base. There's 1,000 milliseconds to the second, 60 seconds to the minute, 60 minutes to the hour, 24 hours to the day, divided into 2 12-hour periods. You have 7 days in a week. You have 4 to 5 weeks in a month. You have 28 to 31 days to the month. You have 12 months to a year, and you got 365 and a quarter days a year. Then you've got leap years, but not on the millennial year or change of the century. And still, the PLC only has base 2. The time data type is actually an instruction executed within the data type that converts any time inputted into a form the PLC can use. The PLC just pulses the milliseconds that are counted until the time has been reached. This means that silly humans can ask a timer to run up to 49 days, 17 hours, 2 minutes and 47 seconds and 294 milliseconds, simply by putting the time value, and the PLC will execute the appropriate number of milliseconds. The example on the left shows how the data is to be entered. T #39D 23H29M for 39 days, 23 hours, and 29 minutes. With the time variable, you have to use the right punctuation. You start off with T for time, and then use the hashtag. You must use the hashtag mark right after the T. If you do not, the processor will try to find a variable that starts with a T and a number combination. For example, T12S34H could be a variable. So T hashtag 3S. Notice there are no spaces between the numbers and units for the hashtag. D stands for days, H stands for hours, M stands for minutes, S stands for seconds, and MS stands for milliseconds. We're now going to look at a new form of complex variable called constructs. Constructs are variables that are made up of other data types packaged into a single new data type. Several instructions, like timers, cannot function with a single variable. Much like a digital alarm clock and a cell phone, there are many things a cell phone has to monitor in order for the alarm to go off at the right time. The TON is an instruction and a data type. When looking at it, if you see that little caret or chevron, it indicates that there is more than a single component in the construct. Constructs give the programmer a great deal of flexibility and simplification. All the pertinent data is collected in one spot. And higher editions of the software allow programmers to custom create a data type construct of whatever variables they wish. When we expand the TON_2 variable, we discover that a TUM timer is constructed of 3 time data types and 3 bool data types. We're now going to look at simple variables as constructs. This likely sounds like an oxymoron. We tried to define variables by their complexity, and here we're suggesting that a simple variable can also be a construct, which is considered a kind of a complex variable. Okay, the truth is, any variable that is larger than a bool can be used like a construct. Returning to our timer example of a construct, it's great that we can look at different data types within the variable TON2, but can we use them in a program? And if so, how? To begin with, we already do. It's just, it may not be apparent. On the rung below, 2 of the bool variables are already connected and ready to work. With box instructions, inputs are lined up on the left side of the box and outputs are on the right side of the box. From this, we can see that TON2's input bool IN is in use, and TON2's output bool Q is also in use. Furthermore, we were shown the proper variable addresses when we looked at the variable selector or monitor and expanded the TON2's chevron or caret. The full name of the in bool variable is TON_2 dot or period IN. Again, it's the punctuation that makes the difference. To use any part of a construct, you need to put the delineator, that is the period, to separate the construct variable's name and the specific member you wish to use. Now let's take a closer look at a simple variable. Here is an example of using a cint as a construct to monitor a process. So here we have 2 cints that have been set up as constructs. Basically, we're looking at each of the individual bools that are in that contiguous variable as a cint. One's called process step and one is called current step. And as the program runs and a step is completed, it's highlighted, and the next current step is activated and it's working. Once that step is complete, it triggers the next step in the process. So as a troubleshooter, if I was told, oh, your production is not running, this simple method of setting this up as a troubleshooting tool, I can say, okay, well, the process is stopped at step 1. So now I've got a place to look. Oh, it's already jumped to step 3. That's good. So it should go to step 4. And you can watch the process in that 30,000 feet viewpoint. So that's one method you can use it. The one drawback about using variables in this fashion is you can't name each of these individuals as giving it an alias. So for example, if step 1 was my startup, step 0 is my startup, step 1 is an initial counter, and step 2 is a conveyor start, step 3 is a box feeder, I can't separate those. I would have to use a series of individual bools with individual names, which can be quite consuming. But all of these are internal. They're not costing me anything in terms of the I/O. So let's do a quick summary of what we've learned so far. Variables can have other names. They can be addresses, which are physical terminations of real-world inputs and outputs. They can have an alias, which is a second name or a nickname, to make it easier to find and follow the logic flow. Variables are kept in collections. You have the global variable collection for variables that can be used by every program within a project, and local variable collections, which are created for each program and can only be used by that program. Variables can be simple single data types, for example, bools and dints. They can be complex data types like time that perform background conversions, and they can be construct data types where the variable is assembled with different data types to make an instruction work, like the TON data type. However, even simple data types can be converted into constructs if the individual bools are used. There are quite a few data types that are specific to instructions, and they will be covered as the new instructions are programmed.